everybody. Please have a seat. So we are so pleased to have elected officials visit with us. They have such a busy day, and they take time out of it and navigate traffic, and they're also navigating votes. So I am going to woefully under-introduce you for the sake of having more time together to talk, and also because you're very well known to our group, and you've spoken many times before. And I will also mention that we're expecting Congressman Sam Graves to join us as well. But today we have Congressman Rick Larsen, and he is joining me for a fireside chat, and we may be joined by Chairman Graves, if votes and traffic allow, to talk about some of what went into the 2024 reauthorization, what we're looking at with air traffic control, modernization, and some of the other things that are coming down the pike and how we're all collaborating to talk about them. But I do want to say one thing, and I can't say it enough, that anyone who thinks that bipartisanship is dead need look no further than at Congressman Larsen and Congressman Graves, because the way they work together, the way we work together to get FAA reauthorization across the finish line against all odds was really something remarkable. And I think all of Congress could learn a lesson from the two of you. And the way that you come together now, working on air traffic control modernization, I think that same bipartisanship is going to help carry us forward. So with that said, please join me in welcoming Congressman Larsen. Okay, well, thank you for being here. Before we begin, I want to thank you personally for not only everything you did in 2024 reauthorization, but also in your support, your decisive action after the early this year, the tragedy at DCA cast a pall over all of us. And that harsh reality was not how we expected to begin this year. And you and your colleagues just took decisive action. You helped spur the FAA, and you have the Deputy Administrator here with us in helping to close that helicopter corridor, and you stayed on top of it, and I want to thank you for that. It was really important to all of us.
Sure, I would also add the National Transportation Safety Board, General Homedy's leadership there, and the board members as part of those folks. And keeping our members on the committee informed throughout the process, immediately after the tragedy, and then as the investigation continued, so we had a better idea of what was happening, what happened, even though it's still not there. We really try to emphasize to members to let the investigators investigate, don't speculate. We're not experts on these things. We need to respond, but respond appropriately. And Sam was, of course, as a pilot, was a big leader in making sure that mostly members, we kept in our lane on that, so that we, the FAA and the DSP had the space to do their work.
Well, you raised an important point, and that it's not just the Congress, but it's also working with the National Transportation Safety Board, the FAA, and you also heard from industry, so we appreciate that. And it was clear that in the aftermath, no one corner of that equation was working in isolation, and I think that's why we were so, you were so successful in addressing the immediate safety risk.
Yeah, and I will. I know we got some other things to talk about, but I would note too. Not much later, but a couple months later, there are these. In AI, you call them hallucinations, I guess. But these sense and avoid, detect and avoid alarms going off, and a few regional airplanes coming into DCA, and it seemed to be related to some of the protection measures out at the Naval Observatory for the VP, all which are legit, except for the fact that the operations of perhaps some counter-UAS technologies were being operated correctly in that airspace, and underscoring, therefore, the counter-UAS bill that we're trying to put together with the Homeland Security and Judiciary Committee in order to protect airspace around large special events, as well as around the presence of any VIP that warrants that. And that's an airspace issue we're dealing with ensure the safety of traveling within the airspace.
Well, and I think that really illuminated the inner workings and the complexity of what goes on in the airspace and how many users are there and how much work goes into making sure it's all properly deconflicted.
Well, when you look up, it looks like there's a lot of space up there, doesn't it? Right? But then you put a few things in there and you discover that the available space decreases exponentially to the number of things that are there.
Right. Well, I'll get into air traffic control modernization. You and Chairman Graves were just incredibly helpful in driving forward the $12.5 billion down payment. We know it's a down payment. We know it's a down payment. But
we do too. We just hope it's not like a 10% down payment.
we hope so too. And I don't think I have time to talk about this, but I think there are some things that we can do that maybe are not necessarily high cost, but even just some procedural changes as well. But what are your expectations about this down payment? And maybe that speaks to the joke that we made that we hope it's not 10%. But how do you want to see this spent? And what do you think are the most important things that can happen to improve resiliency?
Well, I think the FAA has the broad strokes pretty much nailed down. Surveillance and automation, communications, the other things, the big buckets of things are the right places. But I do think that identifying the early wins is going to be important for the FAA. I think on the committee generally, we want to see progress. We want to help the FAA with the progress. It's not. This is going to be a team effort between the FAA and Congress, not just the House, but the Senate as well, and the White House. It's something where everybody can win as well. I think there's lessons to be learned from past investments that have that title Next Gen, and we're all very happy that Next Gen officially goes away later this year per the 24 FAA bill. I think it's the Modernization Office. And maybe even call it continual modernization, because what we thought about in terms of the air traffic control system is you build it and then you leave it, and I think those days are over. I think one way that Sean Duffy had talked about to me was, in the early days, way back when I was starting Congress in 2000. We got BlackBerries, right? I don't know if you remember that, but members of Congress were issuing BlackBerries. And like, wow, it's fast. I can get an email. I can make a phone call. I can keep paper from blowing away off my desk with this thing. It didn't do much, and it did a lot for them, but it didn't do much. But now what we have with smartphones, you can download and place and update consistently, and that's the analogy that Sean used with me to talk about what we're trying to do with modernization, create a system where we can download, we can update consistently, as opposed to getting rid of the one phone and buying the next phone because the other one was old and now you need to have a new one. But having a system where you can update consistently, modernize consistently. But to do that, you need the basic infrastructure in place to do that. Telecom infrastructure, and we really don't have that now. So let's get started with that, and then move from there.
I agree with you. And by the way, I was a BlackBerry holdout. I held on to that BlackBerry long after the time that most people upgraded to the iPhone.
My internal email at my office is still at eBay.
Okay,
so it could be anything.
So
it's
we're
just
old school.
Of all the things I need to do in my life, it's probably not changed that.
Yeah.
I've got plenty of things I need to do.
I know, every upgrade, I think the same thing. So one of the things that we talk about with you in your office, and I want to thank you for this, and the committee staff in the minority office, have been so receptive to making sure that these modernization efforts that we're talking about, and we are a proud member of the Modern Skies Coalition. I see Sharon is in, and A4A has done an incredible job in leading that. I'm on the steering committee as well. And the one thing that we want to emphasize that goes above and beyond what we're saying as part of that coalition is just please make sure that these upgrades come to the small communities, because sometimes in the smaller communities, modernization really does mean just doing the basics. Some airports are not towered. Some airports have contract towers, and so the improvements need to translate there as well. So what are your thoughts about making sure that small airports have access and have the appropriate situational awareness tools they need?
Well, first, I'd say this is a great question for Sam Graves
I think he's coming, so I'll ask him.
But since he is a pilot, he is the father of the general aviation title in the FAA bill, and has really put a lot of time into this, and that includes it's kind of the increased eligibility for medium-sized and smaller airports for the AIP program. So it's probably a better one for him to describe, but I do think that depends how small you want to go, but the role that medium-sized airports do play in our communities today and will play in the future is important, and part of their continued success will be to make sure that they are part of participating in this modernization effort. So it can't all, nothing against Newark, but it can't all be about Newark. It needs to be about Newark and as a symbol of other larger airports, not just with the problems that we have there, but also has to include places other people fly. Everyone flies in the large airports.
We know that very well, yeah. And in fact, 2/3 of the nation's airports get their only source of service from regionals, and that access and the safety there is really, really important as well. I just sort of shift to a question that I'll ask you, and then when Chairman joins us, I'll ask him as well. But how does the committee see its role? We know, we don't want to say next gen anymore. We want to see accountability.
Yeah.
How do you plan to oversee this?
Well, a couple of members already created a kind of a working group. We have the aviation subcommittee, but Troy Nels is the chair of that sort of working group with a few members, including Sharice Davis from Kansas City. Kind of just it's kind of a periodic convening of stakeholders by subject matter. And so the reason I bring that up, I think there'll be an informal bit of oversight in this.
Yeah, I testified. I was in the listening session last
Right.
night. It was, thank you for that. It was very good.
Yeah, and then as well, obviously the more formalized oversight. Sam and I met with Administrator Bedford last week, I guess, sometime. It's not important what the date was, I can't remember it, but we did meet. And I think that I had dinner with Brian in Seattle and talked through some things when he was out there. So you should, come in and talk to us a little bit privately at first, so we can explore some ideas. And frankly, we don't want to put you on the stand first thing. It wouldn't be fair to the FAA, it wouldn't be fair to Brian, and it wouldn't be fair to our committee members. We want to kind of scope some things out first so that we can get some structure around where the FAA is headed. Some members are hearing it for the first time in a hearing. That's not, we want to have effective oversight and not just, so we're not a gotcha committee. We really try hard not to tell people all the time, if you want to be on TV in the District of Columbia, there are committees for that. If you want to be on TV in your district, we're the committee for that. We want our committee members to be thoughtful, be able to say they ask thoughtful questions. And so, we're not at, it's early days. I will say, Sam Graves.
The other half of the partnership.
I'll conclude this point by saying there are some questions. The timeline the FAA has for the modernization, some questions on permitting reform and what FAA specifically means about that and why that's important. I think the allocation of the $12.5 billion, what's going to be spent first of that, what will be spent last. I mean, these are all legitimate questions, but we did, through Sam's leadership, sort of dumped this $12.5 billion on the FAA, knowing that it needed to get spent and will get spent, and now we need to work together to get that plan in place.
Chairman Graves, thank you for being here, thank you for those comments, and thank you for being here. So you actually came at a very good time because Congressman Larsen had just deflected a question to you. So
It's a good one.
so here it is. Well, and you won't be surprised by it. I mentioned that I'm part of the Modern Skies Coalition. We strongly endorse all of those priorities for air traffic control modernization. And I wanted to thank you, as I thank Congressman Larsen, for your decisive action so far, especially in the aftermath of the tragedy at DCA this year. We would be in a very different place, I think, without the leadership of both of you. When it comes to the $12.5 billion down payment that you were both so influential in getting, how do we, what can we do to make sure that the improvements that are being made right now translate out to the smaller communities as well? I know that's near and dear to your heart, but in some of those smaller communities, modernization really does mean just doing the basics. We don't have towers. We don't have ADSB in the towers sometimes. So, what do you think? How can we make sure that modernization reaches the smallest airports?
I don't think that's going to be that big of a problem. I think we're going to see modernization happen. It's going to happen everywhere. But we are seeing a lot of the money that we did in FAA reauthorization too go into smaller airports. We increased AIP to $4 billion a year, up from what, 3.35, I think is what it was approximately. $4 billion a year, and 70% of all that new money's got to go to smaller and medium-sized airports. So we're going to see a lot of improvements at our general aviation airports all over the country. And what we're doing with ATC, it's going to follow that. It's going to follow the same thing. We're going to see. I don't think the FAA in any way is going to not pay attention to our smaller and medium-sized airports. They're going to see the modernization just like our big airports are. We may see it start with the bigger airports, but it's definitely going to happen. And the good news is, and Rick may have pointed this out, Rick and I heard the administrator talk to us 2 weeks ago, I guess, or last week, whatever it was.
I had the same confusion about the date.
I'm still trying to figure out this week. But he said that he thinks it's going to, as long as we have some permitting issues that we have to get through, but he thinks he can get it done in 3.5 years. So that's an aggressive stance, but it's great. It's good news. I'm glad that that's what we're shooting for.
I think it is an aggressive news, and I thought that the request for services that came out, I have to applaud the FAA for it, and we have the deputy administrator here now. But they did focus on communications and surveillance. I think they're prioritizing the things that are important, and we did see that there's the surface safety initiative. So that's something that shows us that small airports are being taken into consideration. I know we're going to truncate our time a little bit because you both have enough boats to navigate, but what do you think is the most important thing to understand, what the lesson learned from DCA and where the focus should be on air traffic control modernization?
Personally, I think the bottom line is we know the equipment we're using is old, and as the administrators pointed out, and Chris has pointed out many times, sometimes you literally have to get the parts, find them online, on eBay, and that sort of thing. That is completely outrageous. It's so outdated. And if nothing else, if there's not one single good thing that can come out of what happened in DCA, if there's only one thing that can come out of it, it's going to be this. It was obviously a horrible tragedy, but we're going to see this finally happen. Next gen, we've been talking about next gen forever, and nothing has happened. Nothing has happened. We just keep talking about it, throwing money at it. And that's one of the reasons why Rick and I eliminated the program in the FAA reauthorization. Now we have this accident at DCA, and we have an FAA and an administrator and a Secretary of Transportation that are all in on getting this done. All in on getting it done and getting it done quickly. So that's the one good thing that's going to come out of DCA, and obviously, we're all going to benefit. That's a lot.
That's much appreciated. And one of the things, I think that is less well known about it, obviously we need to make these reforms for safety, but efficiency as well. And right now, capacity is being drawn down
to allow us to have safety. And I think that's what is less well known is that is usually extracted from the regional side of capacity, because we have smaller planes with fewer passengers, so the idea is that you inconvenience fewer passengers. But of course, everybody has a right to expect the ATC to perform well. So we care about those improvements at the large airports too. And a pitch I would make for something that was in the request for services from the FAA was the common automation platform. I think that that is going to be really, because talk about an ambitious undertaking. That is an ambitious undertaking. We know it because the FAA has looked at it for a while. But that could be a very pivotal efficiency improvement, I think. Go ahead.
I was going to, I have a sense of the timing here, so my staff hasn't stood up yet to give me the international signal for it's time to go, but I do want to emphasize the role that people play in this while we're investing in the modernization, investing in the continued growth of the air traffic controller workforce, investing in the growth of the technical workforce at FAA, and including the folks who are working on the technology and the towers and the trade cons and around the country. That will be a critical part of this. It needs to be a critical part of this investment because as this technology goes in, but you have to train, retrain, and frankly, it may mean changing how the air traffic controllers are trained in the schools, so that they're trained up to what they're going to go into. So you can't neglect that part of this of the modernization.
You know, one thing I do want to point out too is this could come at a better time, because with AAM coming on rapidly and the drone activity that we're seeing, commercial drone activity more and more, our skies are getting ready to get really full really fast. And we need the technology to be able to, we need to know who's out there, you know, and where they are. And it couldn't be happening at a better time. It really couldn't.
And the technology has to evolve, right? We don't have ships that we built in 2003 that we put in place in 2013. So I think that's part of the challenge, is making sure that that tech is not just there, but it evolves. And we could spend another 10, 15 minutes or an hour talking about staffing at the FAA, but the deputy administrators walked us through some of that, and we're going to support them. So I'll turn to the other thing that we're looking at, which is FAA Reauthorization Act implementation. And you all authored a lot of provisions in there that are really key to us. Those safety provisions are among the most important, and the other are workforce. Can you speak to some of those provisions, particularly that are of interest to the smaller carriers? I'll start with you.
Big fan of Section 625, which was the section in the 2018 bill. But it's the Aviation Workforce Development Grants, and these are the grants that businesses can apply for and use to train up folks. It could be pilots, it could be maintenance technicians. We included in the reauthorization of 24 the manufacturing workforce as well. All areas where we're going to need additional people, especially as CFA moves with Boeing on the safety and quality plan, and at some point, when it's appropriate, the 737 line ramps up to higher rates. More people are going to be needed. The 777-9 will be presumably certified soon, relatively soon in the grand scheme of things. That's going to mean a workforce influx as well. So that's just an example of one OEM. There are obviously folks making other types of airplanes in the U.S. as well. So that Section 625 is important. I will note, since I'm really dedicated to this particular program, we're looking for the FAA to issue the revised MOPOs on this 625, and so that people can start applying for those, as well as some outstanding decisions you have to make, that the FAA needs to make. So I just really kind of want to emphasize that. We need, again, the technology side is one part of the supply chain to make this happen. The people side is another part of the supply chain to make this all happen. Those are the foundational elements, and we need to move forward on those.
And there's still far too many people that tell us that it's financial reasons that they can't get into the industry. It's still a huge barrier. It's still keeping the best and brightest out of this. So I appreciate your efforts for putting those workforce development grants and for streamlining and expand this year. That was really important to us, and we thank you for it. And we know that you will help with oversight. The FAA, as it looks at its EQP program, Chris alluded to that this year, that the advisory circular is coming out. So thank you for your leadership on that as well. Do you have any thoughts on workforce?
Well, I completely echo everything that Rick said, and obviously, as he pointed out, I mean, we're going to need a lot of people in aviation at every level coming up. And so I'm pretty proud. Just the bill overall, even outside of that, I thought it was one of the best FAA reauthorizations that we have seen, and it was great. It was a great partnership between Rick and I, and we were truly partners in the process. And the nice thing about it is when you have that camaraderie in one side of the Capitol, and you march over to the Senate and you're locked arm. Your arms are locked on every provision that's in there. And there were things in the bill that I didn't necessarily like. There were things in the bill that Rick didn't necessarily like. But once we had a House position, we were solid. And that allowed us to get most everything that the House had in the bill overall. It was a House bill with a little bit of Senate stuff in it.
It sure was. I really wanted to get into that because we can talk about issues all day. And I think my last question I think is the most important. And it really, I said this before you got here, but if anyone thinks bipartisanship and the ability to cooperate and coordinate with one another is dead, that they need to look no further than the two of you, and I really mean it. I think that our whole country right now could learn a lesson for the way that the two of you came together and you ran the 24 Reauthorization Act. And how many bills passed that year? I don't know that everyone in this room quite understands how momentous it was that we got anything, let alone such an effective law. And I think you did that through old-fashioned bipartisanship. Can you tell me a little bit about the relationship that made that possible? And I'll start with you in case your staff stands up and you have to leave.
Well, we're leaving at the same time. So
okay.
We're at the same place to go. So Sam and I both were elected in 2000 to the House, and then we both served on armed services and transportation the entire time, except for the last couple of years. And so, we have been around the block on transportation. We've been around the block on armed services several times on the NDA, the National Defense Authorization Act, and through the myriad of transportation-related bills that have passed over the last 22 years. And really just thought that, we're privileged to be on this committee. When you build things or fix things that have been built, it's a little easier to be nonpartisan or bipartisan about that. And Sam notes that we have differences on some things, but again, we will come to an agreement that those differences will exist, and we'll either take a vote and win or lose, or decide, well, we're just not going to do those things. We're going to and then kind of keep our members keep my members in line, and keeps his members in line. We have a few exceptions on both sides of the aisle on the committee. But because I think when you're delivering for members, right, they want to be, you tell them you can go home and be part of something and tell people you're part of something. It's a rare thing right now in DC. And so, not that, I will say I've yet to get any of my ranking members on other committees to call and ask me how we do it. They don't seem that interested.
They should.
A lot of it's on the committee too, because we do have great members on the committee overall. We're the largest committee in Congress, and we have the largest jurisdiction as far as I can tell. But we have good members. As Rick pointed out, that we each have our problem children that we have to deal with. But for the most part, it's a great committee. It really is, and the committee. I think the members like to see the ability to get things done, and we're going to run. We got a huge bill coming up next year that's due, and that's a surface transportation reauthorization, and we're going to run the bill the exact same way. It's going to be a member-driven bill, and our members are going to be the ones that ultimately formulate this, and then we'll take it to the floor of the House, and we'll have a position and a House position, and we'll march over to the Senate with it. But we'll run it the same way, and hopefully we'll have a great surface transportation bill to bookend the FAA reauthorization.
And for those who missed it, since July, we passed the Coast Guard bill off the floor of the House with 12 no votes, and Sam and I know where those 12 live. The last 2 weeks, we've done a FEMA reform bill, a big bipartisan FEMA reform bill. We've done a pipeline safety bill this week. Did a bill that reauthorized Estuaries Act, the National Estuary Program, bipartisan. And of course, who can forget the Federal Maritime Commission reauthorization bill that we just did as well. I say that only because that's an idea of the jurisdiction of this committee. It is broad, and so we really tried hard to. Honestly, couldn't do it without great staff, and the staff on both sides of the aisle here today. Couldn't do it without that, without great staff. But there's a lot going on in this committee. But you're not going to see us on TV. Yes, today's right. So Wednesday at 10, we have this markup in our committee. Down the hall, the FBI director was testifying at judiciary. So it's like no one's in the audience at our markup when actual legislation is taking place. Everybody is down at the Judiciary Committee where no legislation is taking place.
Well, you all set the example, and I thank you so much for being here today and for your leadership and everything you're doing. Count on us for support going forward. And we said to the FAA, we say the Congress, please don't work in isolation. We're there as partners. And I have something for each of you. It's just a little challenge point because you've been part of our journey for a long time, and RAA is 50 years old next week, and it's a really important milestone for us. And the leadership that you show on safety, on making sure that we can offer great service to our passengers in airports of all sizes is incredibly important. And so thank you very much for being here, and thanks for all you do.
Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Appreciate you.
And Congressman Larsen,